Ali Hamam from Tahini's. How you doing, man?
Good, David. How are you? Thanks for having me on your show. It's an honor.
Oh no, man! Thanks for joining. Just reached out to you yesterday after hearing a pretty fantastic interview on another podcast. Quick shout out to Citizen Bitcoin. Uh, but yeah, man, you wanted to jump on, and I appreciate your time, and I'm looking forward to hearing a little bit about Tahini's and how you guys are handling all the craziness in the world. So
100%. I'm super excited. Let's do it.
all right, here we go. So yeah, first thing, who is Tahini's? Tell me a little bit about what you guys do. What is the Middle Eastern or the Mediterranean cuisine, and kind of tell me the story.
Yeah. So we started this company back in 2012, where we bought an existing restaurant, and we took it and rebranded it into Tahini's. And we ran that for a few years, and then we opened a second location, and then a third, and a fourth, and now we're a franchise model, and we have four franchisees lined up this year. One is actually about to open up in Whitby, Ontario next week, so it's super
Okay.
exciting. Yeah, and we serve Middle Eastern food, Mediterranean cuisine, shawarmas, kebabs, falafels, all the good stuff. Our motto is like a fast casual type of restaurant, so which means we make good quality food at a fast pace. So
Okay. So for anybody listening that doesn't know, what's a shawarma?
shawarma is a good question, actually. Shawarma is where you get boneless chicken or boneless meat, and you spice it, and you build it into this big spit, and it's kind of like a cylinder shape, and then you put it on a vertical fire like a rotisserie, and the whole spit just keeps turning slowly and cooks from the outside, and you shave it as it cooks, and you make it into whatever you want, delicious sandwiches. You put it on salads, on rice, on everything.
That
So
sounds incredible. Okay, so you probably get this question a lot, maybe from Americans like me. But what's the difference between a shawarma and a gyro?
yeah, so it's potato, really.
Okay,
Um,
it
so
sounds like
you
a gyro. You're slicing them off and put them in a pita.
yeah,
Or
so that type of cooking is, I believe, it got developed in Turkey, and the Turkish people call it doner.
okay.
But that style of cooking spread out throughout the whole Mediterranean area, and it went to Greece, and in Greece it was called gyros. It went to the Middle East, and Middle East it was called shawarmas, and yeah, and that's every country does it a different way.
Okay.
So the Turks do it in their they'll spice it differently. They'll add different toppings on the sandwich. The Greeks will have different meat, which is the Euro meat, and then they'll also have different toppings such as like tzatziki and stuff like that. And then when in the Middle East, it's shawarma, and you also spice it differently, and you put like garlic and pickles and stuff like that. So tahini sauce. So yeah, so it's pretty much the same idea. It's just a different name for the food.
Okay, right. So depending on the region, it's going to be like how some whiskeys, depending on where they're made, are called different things, and we
Exactly.
get a lot of that with across the food industry and the beverage industry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool, man. That's yeah. I've always been a big fan of Middle Eastern food. So um,
So now it's a race between countries on who can spread their style of cooking faster. So yeah, the Greeks are working hard for the Euros. The Middle Easterns are working for the shawarmas, and the Turks are pumping their donairs everywhere. So
right
that's
on.
why I get like a little confusion with people, like.
Yeah. So how did you get into this? Not even just running and operating restaurants, but what's your history with where'd you learn to cook? Kind of tell me a little bit about that.
Right. So I graduated from Egypt in 2011, and um, some events happened, and we all decided to move to Canada to start our careers, basically. Me and
You all, is that your family,
Yeah, so
people?
it's me, yeah, me and my brother and my parents, but my father got a little delayed on the move. So me and my brother wanted to start and own a business, and we didn't know that we were going to go into the restaurant business. We kind
Oh,
of came here and started looking, and we found this great restaurant with a great location for sale. So we bought it, and now we're in the restaurant business.
very entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
I was imagining you'd say you grew up cooking and flipping tongs and doing all kinds of stuff, but
No,
that's
no.
incredible. So you came
I
over.
do love food though. I've always loved cooking at home and stuff like that. But obviously, like running a restaurant is completely different than just cooking at home.
Yeah, yeah, you're on a time schedule. It's a little bit different. You have to
Yeah.
manage people. Yeah, I'm a huge fan. We cook. Me and my wife cook all of our meals at home, and
That's amazing.
we're big into that. But it's a very different environment. I grew up cooking in kitchens, and it's very high pressure and a very different scenario. So that's cool. I mean, you've been so that was in 2012. You've been able to over the past 8 years. You've obviously gotten it. You've figured it all out. You've gotten the business side of it. You figured out how to operate or put together a franchise program. And I mean, now like that's huge, man. A lot of restaurants, as you know, the majority of restaurants will not go very far. They don't make it after past a year or two. So what do you attribute your success to? Just being able to grind and adapt, or having family around, or what do you think?
Yeah, so it's not an easy business, but just like any business, it's you have to have the ability to always adapt and always focus on how you can make your business better, on how to advertise, the marketing side of things, just a blend of putting all these things together. Accounting and profitability obviously is a huge issue um, in the restaurant industry, especially right now. You gotta kind of be a jack of all trades and have that hustle mentality, never give up, and yeah, put all these things together and just make it happen.
There we go. That's great advice.
Yeah.
So as far as what you mentioned being adaptable, obviously this the COVID pandemic, economic pause to some degree in areas, this downturn has affected everybody pretty similarly throughout the world. So I'm sure it's hit London, Ontario, just the same way that it's hit me in the Pacific Northwest. What have you guys done at the restaurant level first to kind of you know adapt to the takeout or delivery or any of the restrictions in the dining room with labor and employees? Kind of talk through what are some of the things that have changed.
Yeah, so that's quite a story. Like when COVID broke out and um, March hit, our sales plummeted like 70-80% in a week, right? And it was, I'm not gonna lie to you, David, it was hell, right? Um, Especially that, the restaurant business, you know how sensitive it is to sales plummeting that much, right? So we did what any business owner would do. At that point, we had 3 restaurants, and we're 3 partners in this company. So we each went to one of the restaurants and ran it. We let most of our employees go. We worked day and night, 7 days a week. We were, doing the work ourselves. Like we're washing the dishes, we're building the spits, we're making the food,
Mm-hmm.
from 8 a.m. all the way till close. So yeah, it was tough. Like we went through hell. We didn't know at that point. You don't know when this is gonna end, right? So you're doing all of this with the anxiety of, oh my God, is this gonna last forever?
Oh yeah.
Because like we're gonna go out of business, right? So we just did what we did, and we hustled. We let most of our employees go, and April came around mid-April. Things started to pick back up. So we were very fortunate for that. We adapted the restaurants in a way where we knew this is the new reality. We have to do something, and we knew that people wanted to eat. So the transition to online was pretty easy for us because we already had all the platforms set up. Our online delivery system, our website was set up. Everything was set up so that we can do that transition well. So we were very lucky. So April, things got back almost to normal, and then by May, we were back in business.
Wow. So you said you had your online situation already set up, where you had a platform where customers could come on and order, or they could come on and see the menu and then call in an order, or it was just all digital, all online.
Yeah. So it's for our website, it's set up that you can order online for pickup or delivery. But then we also set up with delivery platforms like Uber Eats and Skip the Dishes and DoorDash and a couple of Chinese platforms as well, right? We had all that infrastructure set up so that when customers naturally transition to ordering food online, we were right there to accept them. And that was a key point.
Yeah. You were definitely ahead of the pack on that. I had, as we were talking about before, I work with a lot of different groups and restaurants here in the Pacific Northwest, and people were scrambling in March and April to try and set up DoorDash, try and set up Uber Eats, trying to get all of these accounts set up. And, they were waiving fees initially, trying to onboard people too. But anyone who actually had the infrastructure set up going into this was marginally ahead of everyone else, even though, I mean, it obviously wasn't easy. Everything has its own challenges, and everyone saw that, 80% drop, and how do you shuffle things around to accommodate. But yeah, that's awesome that you were at least forward thinking enough to have all that stuff put in place.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the point, David, that I was mentioning earlier, is that you have to adapt to the situation. You're gonna go. Not everything is gonna go the way you planned. So having that ability to adapt to changing conditions. This is war, man. Like, you if you don't fight and try to make your business survive, you're just gonna go out of business, right? So yeah.
Yep, absolutely. And that's not just restaurants. That's all business. That's all small business right now. That's all distributors. We were in a similar situation, almost directly reflecting, because we have all customers, or all of our customers are restaurants, right?
Yeah.
So when you guys are putting up that 80% drop, and then a 40% below year over year, that's a direct reflection of what the vendors, the brokers, the distributors, the manufacturers, everybody along the supply chain are feeling those same numbers. So, you guys pump the blood, your customers pump the blood into the system and push it backwards all the way to the farmer. So yeah. And what I've been saying kind of in 2020 going through all of this is there's this massive consolidation of market share. So, you're seeing this, you have customers that are getting to the same point, physically, mentally, just completely depleted, and deciding we're shutting the doors. We can't handle this anymore. And
a lot of the restaurants that were right beside us, they closed down, and
yeah,
it was sad, but it just happened. right? And things were actually really tough for us too, because we also had a commissary, right? Like a factory where we prepped the food and the meat and stuff like that, and then we delivered it to all of the restaurants, right?
Okay,
So
yeah,
that
talk
was
a little bit about that. That's so a commissary is one central location that's a kitchen that you prep, either spices or dressings or meats or stuff that goes out to all the restaurants.
yeah. So we opened that business right after we opened our third location, and during March, we were also like we were planning on opening the fourth, but then COVID hit, so
Mm.
that got delayed from the construction side of things and everything like that. And yeah, running the commissary is like running a fourth business as well, right? So that commissary is going to eventually supply all of our restaurants and all the franchisees as well, and even other restaurants in the area that are interested in our products. So yeah, so that was added on top of all the all the hell that we went through, right?
Yeah, but we do see we're seeing some relief. I don't know. Do you guys go by phases up there with
Uh,
reopening? And we have phase 1, 2, 3, and
yeah,
4 where
yeah. To be honest, David, I stopped paying attention to who says what phase we're on,
yeah,
because to us it didn't really matter, right? We're still gonna go to work. We're still gonna do what we do. So yeah,
right.
it is what it is. You don't I would have advised every restaurant owner out there, um, try to focus on what you can control rather than obsessing of what events are going to happen around you.
That's excellent advice. Absolutely. We need a little more of that personal responsibility, adaptability, the types of things that you can absolutely control.
Yeah.
Yeah, the point of kind of asking about phases, and we're different counties have different things going on over here, all over the country, all over our country, your country, all over the world, I should say. Uh, but the dining in restrictions there's a direct reflection to how many people you can have inside your restaurant. I think we're sitting at about 50% across the board in most of the counties in Washington, where I am. Are you guys in that same position where you have to space out the chairs? You can't have more than 50% occupancy, that type of thing?
Yeah, so that worked out really bad for restaurants, because especially sit down restaurants, man, they got hammered, because there's a lot of small restaurants out there that only do sit down, and by doing that, those same rules that you guys have were there applied here as well. Their capacity was basically cut in half, right?
Yeah.
Which means that their revenue pretty much is also cut in half if you're just doing sit down. So I think sit down right now is not a good business model to have. Try to diversify as fast as you can and as soon as you can. Like you're a restaurant can't run if its revenue gets cut by 50%. That's just not going to happen.
No, and any sort of supplemental help from the government is going to that doesn't last forever either. So
Yeah.
you're spot on. I think you saw on maybe Wednesday this week, Ruby Tuesdays filed for bankruptcy. They've had some previous issues in the past too, but we've seen these big chain restaurants and obviously one-offs, mom and pops all across the world that haven't adapted and shut the doors. So it's it's the
I would say like we focus on like we're profitable just from the pickups and the deliveries, and yeah, that's it. Like we're profitable just from that. So whatever people that come to sit down and eat, that's just gravy on top, right?
Mhm.
And we try to focus that on even if the government came out with another shutdown where they're like no dine in at restaurants, we're still okay.
Yeah.
And
And that's incredible. I mean, that's something that everybody hopefully at this point has adapted that same mindset, right? Either they've closed the doors or they've realized what they need to do to be successful. But I mean, you're spot on. You need to think future minded, long term thinking in every aspect of your business, which is another one of the big points that I wanted to talk to you about. One of the reasons that I reached out and why you're in my paths crossed in the first place is that you guys have recently been in the news, been talked about quite a bit in a pretty forward-thinking industry that is the Bitcoin industry. So you recently took some of your reserves or some of your cash position and moved that into Bitcoin as a store of value. So obviously, we've got to talk about that. What's the thinking behind that?
100%. So we pretty much went on a Bitcoin standard, right? Where, which for us means all of our cash reserves outside of our working capital, which is needed for the next 6 months or longer, depending on the year or market conditions. All the cash reserves that are stored in the company, we converted it into Bitcoin. And the reason we did that is, what happened during March and the pandemic and everything. We saw the reaction of central banks around the world, where they're printing trillions of dollars to try to help the economy, right? And when I told you we let most of these people go, we tried to get them back, but they wouldn't come back because they were just getting money sitting at home, right? And we were like, me personally, I was faced with this problem of trying to protect my own personal wealth. So I was lucky enough to kind of avoid the crash that happened in March, because before that I was mainly invested in stocks, but January I had sold like 75% of my positions, and I got lucky, to be honest, right? Like, I didn't know it was going to happen. It just worked out for me that way. So when March hit, I was, I piled back in, but I had a responsibility to kind of protect my wealth as best as I can. So personally, I've been like investing my own money throughout the years, and I do my own research, and I try to learn as much as I can and from all sources. And then when March hit, I came across Bitcoin, and I bought a little after it had crashed like 50% or something like that.
Yeah.
So when I bought a little, I didn't really understand what it was. I kind of bought it out of curiosity. So I started digging in a little bit deeper into it. And the more I learned about Bitcoin, the more I was fascinated by the technology and what it does and what it can do for people all over the world, right? So what I mean by that is I came to the conclusion that, Bitcoin is a savings technology. It's much more than just an investment, right? So yeah, I basically went down the rabbit hole in March, the Bitcoin rabbit hole in March. So during all the craziness that was happening that we talked about earlier, I was at the restaurants, and as I was like doing dishes and building shawarma spits and all that, I was listening to books, and I was listening to podcasts, and watching videos, trying to educate myself on the problem that I had, which is how to protect my wealth, right? So I read the Bitcoin standard by Saifuddin Ammous. It's an amazing book. I recommend everyone to go read it. So then I bought a little bit more, right? And I read the Price of Tomorrow by Jeff Booth, bought a little bit more. Watched and listened to a ton of podcasts, and just kept buying more and more and more. And I realized that, we have a problem right now with inflation, that inflation is running at, a rate that's around 10 to 20%. And
now, for anybody that doesn't, and I'm sorry, anybody that doesn't, that would hear something like 10 to 20% inflation, that seems a bit high. The CPI shows, the target is 2%. There's alternative resources for people, and I can link to the Chapwood Index and some other things that might be interesting. But how is it that inflation is double digit when we're being told that it's about 2%?
Great question. I love that you asked that. So before 2020, I thought inflation was 2%. Okay. But when I learned more about inflation, I realized that you can make inflation whatever you want, as long as you change the variables on which you measure inflation, right? So if you put your Netflix in as one of these variables in inflation, guess what? It's never going to go up, right? Because Netflix provides that product to billions of people, millions of people, and it costs them nothing.
It's right? A technology being deflationary. You can kind of press that number against inflation, right?
Exactly, right?
Okay.
And you can really learn these concepts by the book that I recommended, The Price of Tomorrow, and The Bitcoin Standard. Both of these books really changed my perception on inflation, right? So you got this CPI index that's like filled with all these items that can be mass produced at really, really low costs, right? And that's what everybody knows inflation to be, right? But when you look at real estate, for example, that doesn't have a 2% inflation rate. You look at stocks, that doesn't have a 2% inflation rate. Bonds, they're up 20% this year, right? It's a 20% inflation rate. If you want to buy a bond, which is like a piece of paper that will give you, like 20,000 a year or 50,000 to live on, that is going up at a rate that's close to the 20%, right? So what does that mean, David? It means that your retirement is running away from you at a 10 to 20% per year, right? So if you're like, unless you make 20% extra every year on your income for the rest of your life, you're not going to be able to catch up. Right?
Right.
And that's the problem that we all have right now. And it's a problem people are overlooking. And when I looked at it from my personal perspective, I had to find a way to fix that in any cost, right? And I think the best solution to fix that is by Bitcoin, because Bitcoin has properties that it will float on top of the inflation that's coming in now and in the future.
Because when you have a situation like 2020, and I guess it started in 2008 with quantitative easing and expanding the balance sheet of the Fed and central banks around the world, we're increasing the amount of dollars there are in circulation, and technically not printing, but increasing that number. And you get this, what you talked about is asset inflation, right? Asset price inflation. So monetary inflation is increasing the money supply. Asset inflation is increasing the price of stocks, the price of real estate, the price of things like that. So yeah, where do we? A long time ago, our parents were able to purchase bonds that were yielding at 15% or something like that, a 30-year bond. And they could put, they could store some of their dollars or some of their purchasing power in bonds, and that would be money for their retirement or their kids down the road, 30 years down the road. That interest rate has gone down and down and down and down and down until it's reached near zero this year. And when you have inflation, even at 2%, that's a negative real yield, right? So if inflation is actually at 10%, 15% of the products that people are actually buying, actually paying for, and you have a bond that is yielding 1% or 0.5%, that's a negative 8 to 10% in purchasing power. So I've discovered something similar. I think we maybe read a lot of the same books or kind of listened to a lot of the same type of literature. And I've come to a similar conclusion myself with my own personal savings and investments, and which in the same vein, if anybody understands the value proposition of gold, of something that's built off of scarcity, or that has scarcity as one of its main qualities, you would understand also the value proposition of something like Bitcoin, which is the invention of absolute scarcity, right? So it's all connected, and it's all about finding something that is scarce that will retain its purchasing power over time by using this asset price inflation to its advantage.
Exactly.
Is that kind of your same thinking a little bit?
100%. I mean, like in March, when the dip happened, I actually bought a ton of stocks and a lot of gold and Bitcoin. And then as time went by, I kind of transitioned most of that into just Bitcoin. I have a little bit of stocks left, but
they're not making more of only one of those things.
Yeah. So my thesis on Bitcoin is that it's a free, true savings technology that stores wealth across time and space, right? And like if you think about that for a little bit, I just want to explain that a little bit to your viewers so that
please
understand, because it's pretty loaded, right? It's free in that you have full control over your money, and no entity or no country or no company controls Bitcoin, right? So it's free in that sense, right? It's free in that you don't pay a subscription to own Bitcoin, right? It's free as an entity, right? And it's true because you can verify all of Bitcoin's claims and everything that Bitcoin promises on your own with a satellite dish in the Sahara Desert somewhere in Egypt. Okay?
I love that.
So it's true in that sense. It's the most truthful vehicle we have ever witnessed. Okay? And then it's a savings technology, because if you think about it, David, the idea of savings that was engraved in us ever since we started earning our first pennies is by a piggy bank. Okay? And whatever money you make, you put it in the piggy bank and you save it for later, and you expect that money to be untouched.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But unfortunately, the piggy banks of the world right now, where we all put our money in, they don't operate like a piggy bank. Okay? The piggy banks of the world, they have a hole in the back, right? And they take your money and they lend it out to A, B, C, D, and whoever.
Which is fractional reserve banking and the central bank system.
Exactly. Exactly. And that also, and this is something I've learned from Saifuddin recently. When that happens, that gives the banks power to actually print more money, the retail banks, right? And if you think about it like this, from perspective of you buying a business or a home, let's say a home, you bought $1 million house, right? You're paying that $1 million house over 30 years plus interest. So you're paying probably 1.3, 1.4 million over the 30-year period, right?
Mm-hmm.
That extra 300 and 400,000 is money printed that's added on the total money supply of the economy, right? So you're giving them the power to mine more money, essentially. Okay. And Bitcoin, right? The best thing about it is that and that's why it's a savings technology, is that it's encrypted, right? So you can verify that no one will ever mess with your money, with your wealth, right?
Mm-hmm.
The value stays the same, right? Which means it's going to go up because the money of the world right now is being messed with and being devalued, right? So Bitcoin, the fact that it has that encryption in it, it serves as the best store of wealth no matter what happens around it, right? And it stores it across, so free true savings technology, right? That stores your wealth across time, right? So stores it across time because it's fixed and it has the halving function,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'll get into the halving function, but it's fixed in the fact that it's money that you know for a fact that is not gonna go above the 21 million that the amount of coins that it's supposed to have. So it has an element to money that we've never seen before in history of money, which is what you were talking about, the absolute scarcity.
Which nothing's, yeah, and that's what attracted me to the idea, is once I wrap my mind around the invention of absolute scarcity is by definition the most scarce version of this invention of absolute scarcity. It was the first one to do it.
100%.
So that's, yeah,
Yeah, you might think, well, my stocks are fixed. Well, actually, they're not, because they're being rehypothecated by your broker, right?
mm-hmm.
Not a lot of people know that. It's in the fine print, right? And so that means is even if when you buy stocks, right, your broker takes your stocks, which is your money, and lends it out for people that want to do whatever, short it or whatever is being done. I don't know. I don't even know what happens.
And
Right? So again, it doesn't have that absolute scarcity. And the companies themselves, they they can come out whenever they want and say, hey, we're going to issue 1 million more shares and dilute your share in the company.
just that they have the ability to do that, just like all currencies, all other crypto projects, and they have the ability that if they wanted to, they could change the supply cap, they could issue more stocks, they could do that. Not to say that they will, but just that they have the option to do it is a reason for me to be skeptical of the store of value proposition on any of those items.
100%. And that's the best thing about Bitcoin, is that nobody owns it and nobody knows who made it, right?
Nobody knows.
Yeah, you can trust just software. You don't have to put your trust in any one person or entity. You just trust the code, right?
And for anybody that wouldn't, that they're thinking, I don't know anything about Bitcoin. What are you guys talking about? You can verify it. There's a process. You could run your own full node or the entire history of the Bitcoin blockchain on a computer that you have access to, that you can verify this public ledger, this distributed ledger, verify all of the functions of the monetary policy, the 21 million supply cap, who has what, the transaction history. Am I missing anything there?
Yeah, no, you're dead on, right? And yeah, so another reason why, so the fact that it's fixed, right, as a money, as a base money, means that the value of Bitcoin is equal to the future productivity of the entire planet, right? Because and it's just discounted back to today's price, right? But as the productivity of the planet, as we do more trade and build more, tahini restaurants all over the world, and the whole world just becomes more productive. They become productive on top of an absolutely fixed money system, which will always be increasing as the productivity of the world grows, right? So that's one really cool thing about Bitcoin, among a lot of other things, right? But it also has this halving function, right? Which every 4 years, the new incoming supply that comes into Bitcoin on a daily basis gets cut in half, right? Which leads to an exponential decay in the money supply for Bitcoin.
And that's just written into the software. That can't be changed either. So every 4 years, the supply of new coins that come into existence every 10 minutes gets cut in half.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. So when that happens, it increases a measure of value called the stock to flow, which is used to valuing other stores of value like gold and silver and so on, and real estate even. And when that increases every 4 years, your purchasing power goes up with it, right? So because it has these two things, it stores your wealth and actually increases your purchasing power across time, right? So stores your wealth across space in the fact that you can do whatever you want with it, right? And so this is something that I've actually experienced personally in my life. So when we moved here to Canada, my parents wanted to retire, and we were starting our careers, right? But my parents had a lot of their wealth stored in Egypt, in both real estate and fiat, which is currencies.
This is in about 2011.
Yes. So after the Egyptian Revolution, we witnessed the Egyptian Revolution in 2011 before we came here, and we were part of it, and it was amazing, right? Like, it was me and my brother in the streets during the revolution, and we saw one of the greatest events in history, right? We faced riot police. We got hit with tear gas. Squads of riot police surrounded us and tried to close in on the protesters, and protesters fought back, and we had to evade them, and
wow, you're really in it.
Yeah, like we dove in that revolution, and we marched all across Alexandria and we went to Cairo, Tahrir Square, and we were part of the protest there, and it was a great year for Egypt, and we overthrew President Mubarak, who was like a dictator that ruled Egypt for 30 years. So after that, we decided to move, and my parents, because they wanted to retire, wanted to move their wealth from Egypt to Canada. And then we were faced with the fact that we can't, the banks over there, they froze my parents' money coming out of the country. So they couldn't move their money outside of the country because the banks told them so.
Mm-hmm. And that was the Egyptian pound, right?
Yes.
And that was okay.
Right. They had they gave us, they said, oh, you can transfer $1,000 a month, something like that, something like ridiculous, right? And because of that, it forced my father to work an extra 6 years in Saudi Arabia, because that's where he was working. He's a math professor. I'm sitting in his desk right now. You can see like math behind me.
I thought those were recipes.
No. Yeah, well, our recipes kind of look something similar.
Yeah, I was like, geez, what are you guys doing over there?
Yeah, so yeah, like my dad, he's a warrior, man. Like he worked an extra 6 years in order to fund their new home here in Canada, and during those um, 5 years, sorry, during those 5 years from 2012 to 2017, where things in 2017 got a little bit easier to move money around.
Okay.
We all saw the Egyptian pound drop 65% against the US dollar.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this is why.
Yeah, you can understand my frustration.
Yeah.
With the idea of you need to control your money, right? Because
it's something that can't be. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, you think you could own your own money that's in your bank. When shit hits the fan, you don't.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the reality of it, right? So Bitcoin fixes that because you can move your money wherever you want, right? You don't, you're not gonna wait for somebody to give you permission to move your own wealth, from wherever. And a lot of people, David, should, especially immigrants that flee countries, they should resonate with that, because I'm sure that they've also faced experiences like this one, right? And when you see your wealth evaporate in 5 years, it really shows the benefits of owning Bitcoin.
I can't imagine. I mean, we can read about and we can see that different countries all over the world have gone through recently hyperinflation, which is just incredible printing of the currency, and it decreases the purchasing power of each individual unit. I probably don't need to explain hyperinflation. Everyone knows that's something that we've seen. You look back in history, you see a lot of the same thing of currencies getting debased to for governments or kings to fund wars and to fund things like that.
It's happening all over the world right now. Like, look at Venezuela, look at Lebanon, look at Turkey right now. Turkey's going through this as we speak, right? I guarantee you, within a few years, the Turkish lira is going to be destroyed.
And I would say that there's going to be a direct correlation between that, among other things, of the depreciation or devaluation of all these global currencies and the increased value of things like Bitcoin, of gold, where people know that they can store their money. And short term, I think the stronger fiat currencies or government controlled currencies like the dollar will get stronger. We somebody that deals in the dollar. I understand that it's losing purchasing power over time, but I've never had a problem with storing my savings in dollars. Recently, over the past few years, since I've educated myself on what's actually happening here, I've been transitioning into other forms of currency, other forms of money. But we take that in the Western world, we take that for granted because we have this system that is taxing us in different ways, but it's not terrible and it's not noticeable. It's the analogy of, the frog in the boiling or in the water and the boiling pot, right? So you don't notice that there's a problem until all of a sudden you're losing all of your value overnight, and it could happen. And historically, it has happened to every currency, right? So not every money, not every monetary metal, but every currency, every fiat currency. I think the average lifespan is like 27 years.
100%, yeah.
We've been going on a little over 100 years, really 50 years since the dollar was no longer pegged to gold. But we're we're really playing with fire with a lot of this, quantitative easing and debasement of our currency, and this modern monetary theory is what what it was being referred to as. It's a new experiment, and it's the shortest lived monetary experiment in modern history. It's
Right.
it's pretty wild. But you firsthand understand the coming from Egypt and seeing what happened to the Egyptian pound and what happened to your parents' wealth, and so that's why Bitcoin clicked for you.
100%. And that's why, like when I say Bitcoin is a free true savings technology that stores your wealth across time and space, I really hope people understand all the meaning that goes behind that. And you have a duty to protect your family and your business. And there's going to be a flood of liquidity and money coming in around the world, and people are going to like it at first, but eventually they're going to drown, right? And Bitcoin, because it has all these elements, it serves as the best arc that you can build for yourself, your family, and your business to float on top of that liquidity, right? So that's why we personally, we went on a Bitcoin standard, and for our business, we decided to go on the Bitcoin standard. And I hope that like more and more people do that, because ultimately it's going to save you.
I love that analogy too, that it's an arc. That's something that I've thought about, not in that same language, but we did not have an off ramp during the last financial crisis in 2008. There was really no escape when risk was high, right? So people went into gold, people went into dollars. Now we have an option. Now there is an option. And I'm a big advocate for anything that's scarce, right? I'm a fan of commodities and real estate, gold, monetary metals, and Bitcoin, of course, is kind of where I've gotten to recently. Okay, that's a really good segue. You're talking about, this is what you've done for yourself. You've always been kind of into investing and into understanding markets and where to put money. Recently, we've seen some other businesses that have decided to make a similar move. So I'm sure a lot of small businesses over the world have been figuring out, hey, I do this myself. I'm going to do this with my cash reserves or my corporate treasury. The two biggest ones that we'll just have to touch on, obviously, MicroStrategy, Michael Saylor's company. He's been all over the news lately. He put, I don't know the percentage, but I think $425 million into Bitcoin, and this was just a few weeks ago. And then we have Square, which is Jack Dorsey's company. They came out and put 1% or $50 million of their reserve or corporate treasury into Bitcoin as well. And they did it for the same reasons that you're talking about. It's almost identical. I've heard these guys talk about the reasons behind why they did it. And it's, to protect their purchasing power and inflation hedge, something that, we're seeing as these guys are probably a few years ahead of the curve from what other companies and other CEOs are going to be doing. I personally believe a lot more are going to kind of jump on this. I wouldn't say trend, but just make this transition sooner than later. And there's probably a lot that have already drawn up the paperwork. But yeah, you're a trendsetter here, and announcing that you've done something similar with these two incredibly impressive companies. Square is one of my favorite companies in the world for a lot of different reasons. In the restaurant industry, I love the payment processors that they have, and I've always said they're 5 to 10 years ahead of everyone else. So, congrats on the foresight, right? On being able to, and obviously, you know what you're doing and what you're talking about here. A lot of serious thought was put behind the decision, but yeah, talk about that. You think we're going to see more?
Yeah, and we made the announcement that we would put the businesses' cash reserves into Bitcoin right after MicroStrategy. We were kind of talking about it before then, because as So David, as I was going down the rabbit hole back in March and April, I dragged my partners down with me. And whenever I'd read a book, I'd send it to them. Whenever I'd read an article, I'd send it to them, you know. So, you know, before we made that move, we were all Bitcoiners at the company. And we ran out of money personally to put more to buy more Bitcoin, right? And the company was doing well. We were always profitable and had cash reserves at the company, and we had that same obligation to protect that. Mm-hmm. So we decided to, as soon as we saw the Michael Saylor news with MicroStrategy, that kind of pushed us over the edge, and we just jumped right in.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, hey, that news was incredible. Just for, you know, anybody who's been watching the industry, watching all the involvement of, you know, legendary hedge fund manager Paul Tudor Jones, or, you know, all of these people that have been trying to kind of dip their toes in Bitcoin, understand what it is. Microsoft, of course, building their, working on their decentralized identification platform. And but when Michael Saylor came out and just said, hey, we took the whole thing and threw it in, and here's why, I mean, his description of, he realized he was sitting on a $500 million ice cube was one of the coolest analogies that I have ever heard behind a, you know, somebody, especially at that level, describing why they've decided to jump into something like Bitcoin. So yeah, dude, I was same boat. I was not surprised, but I was going, hell yeah, let's go.
Yeah. And that's why I honestly think that it won't stop there. You're going to see within the next year and two years, like a race of corporations trying to protect their wealth, because again, they're all faced with the same problem, right? This is not just a problem for me and you and Michael Saylor. They all have the exact same problem. So they all have, like, are going to work on ways to protect their company. And the best way to do that is through Bitcoin. And you're going to see more and more corporations do that. Now, I hope that people would listen to, you know, our talk here, and more medium and small sized businesses would jump in and front run that, because this is going to happen whether you like it or not, right? And Bitcoin is not going to care about your feelings, right? Because it's the fairest and hardest money out there, right? So if you're the last person to buy it, okay, you're going to be left crying, and you're going to be basically drowning. So this is an opportunity to you know, spread awareness on this and help medium and small sized businesses, because, you know, this is coming, man. Like, you gotta adapt, live with the ages, right? Like, this is the digital age that we're in right now. So if you're not gonna adapt to that, you're just gonna be left behind.
Ali, and that's exactly why I wanted to talk to you and get you on this podcast. Is we do have restaurant owners, operators, people that are, and distributors, CEOs of distributors that are listening and thinking about this same type of thing. So it's an incredibly important message to get out. And we're talking about these giant companies, something like Square or MicroStrategy. It takes about 12 months of getting your board on board, getting all the paperwork through, looking at how you're going to classify it, doing all of this stuff. So I think you're spot on. It's going to happen. I know it's going to happen. So if you are a smaller ship that's more agile and able to turn quicker, you don't have to go through the process of asking the board and asking your CFO and doing these 12 to 18 month process to make a purchase. You could take a look, make sure that it's within your, take a look at your local laws. And I would love to talk to you also about, you know, what you actually did, how you, just the process of how you actually, you know, not where you made the purchase. That should stay private, but just how difficult it was, how many hurdles you had to jump over. Because I'm sure it's a hell of a lot easier than these big companies that when they start putting 1%, 2%, 10% allocation of their reserves that's going to significantly move the price. And the little guys like you and me are, not going to be able to get in to this next level of the financial industry at a reasonable price.
Yeah. Yeah. So what we did, so I would recommend for like everybody personally to own the actual Bitcoin, learn the process. It's you have to educate yourself on how to buy it, store it, secure it, all of that, right? I don't want to get into that because it's a long process, but it's your wealth, man. Like you gotta learn this stuff out. And for our business, because we're, like you said, one of the first people that did that. Sorry, we did it through our brokerage account, and we bought a Bitcoin trust.
Okay.
To make everything transparent with any entities or anything like that.
And that could be done right off of Schwab or Fidelity. There's
100%. If you have a corporate investment account, you can just go in and buy a Bitcoin trust, right? There's a couple of them out there, right? You can.
And I'll put a link. I'll put a link in the notes here of just information about that. I'll try to find a good piece of good a white paper of some sort where somebody describes buying into a trust or buying into the process of buying Bitcoin.
100%. And until this becomes the normal and everybody's doing it, we would eventually exchange that to owning, having control of our own Bitcoin within the company. But we're waiting for all the details to be ironed out, and then eventually we'll do that transition. But for personal portfolios, yeah, just own the actual Bitcoin, buy it yourself.
Awesome. And there was something else that Square put out recently when they announced, it looks like Jack's team over there did write kind of a how-to guide, step-by-step process. So I'll link to that also. That was a really interesting read, just how they classified it. And I mean, that's incredible to have not only this type of movement, but somebody that operates that big of a company saying, this is what we did, and this is how you can do it. So
100%. Jack, the leader, man, I respect that guy so much. Like he's done a lot to help, first of all, the Bitcoin space and help people out. Like his companies do a lot of good in this world, and he's definitely a leader.
Absolutely. I don't know if you saw recently, they launched I'll probably butcher this. COPA is the acronym. It's it's an alliance to put patents. What is it? COPA, crypto something, patent alliance. And basically people can bring their patents that they have in the space and contribute to this library of patents that other people who join the organization, join COPA, are able to tap into those patents. And I mean, nobody does that, right? So if he had a lot of, and that's for all, open source patents. So he could decide to keep that private, keep that closed door to himself, but it'll advance the space and the prospects of this open financial system, this global open internet native financial system, that's his big dream, so much further by just getting intellectual capital from all over the world to join this library. And yeah, dude, you're spot on. He's one of the most impressive, people, in my opinion, on the planet. I mean, he's pretty great with the things that he's thinking about and has been talking about for a long time. And I think everyone's kind of catching up to what he's been talking about for the past 10 years, which is really cool to see.
Yeah, he's ahead of his curve for sure.
For sure. So are you, and we're definitely a small minority of people who are thinking about these types of concepts. Because I mean, that's my next question is how, and you already kind of touched on it, but how did you get your partners to get on the same page as you to make this type of decision? Because to go down the proverbial rabbit hole, as we call it, you have to understand, the history of money, economics, history of cryptography, game theory. There's all these different things that you have to start thinking about, and then why Bitcoin and not these other versions of Bitcoin. So it takes a long time to get it, and information has been distilled over the past, I'd say, really 4 years, to where the Bitcoin community has really created an incredible amount of content to get people there faster. But you said books and podcasts. You just kind of did a quick dive with those guys.
Yeah, so I think you should start with, I would recommend 3 books that you have to read.
Please.
So you need to read The Bitcoin Standard by Saifedean Ammous to understand what is money, right? And then you need to read The Internet of Money by Antonov to understand the technology behind Bitcoin, to understand like what it is. And then you need to read The Price of Tomorrow by Jeff Booth to understand where the future is headed. And when you read those 3 books, it kind of comes at it from different angles, and you get this kind of good idea and good understanding of Bitcoin from all sorts of different angles, right? So, this is the book that I made my partners read. These are the books I made my partners read, and I definitely recommend them to everyone out there. And then trust me, if you read these books, you're not gonna stop there. You're going to continue learning and educating yourself. Robert Breedlove writes amazing articles.
Yeah.
His actually article, The Number Zero in Bitcoin, was kind of like an aha moment for us, right? Where it all clicked for us.
Yep.
So definitely read him. Vijay Boyapati, The Bullish Case for Bitcoin article is amazing. So many good content out there. The Bitcoin community is, as much as they seem like fanatic from the outside, they're actually amazing at welcoming new people in and giving them resources and showing them the way. But they can seem a little crazy, I'll tell you that. And we were kind of afraid that they would kind of judge us because like we're new to Bitcoin or whatever. But they honestly, like, the whole community is amazing, and we appreciate that.
Oh, that's awesome to hear, man. Yeah, I've noticed that too. There's if you're interested in Bitcoin for the sound money economics, fixing the money, fixing the banking system, everybody's on the same page and everybody is very welcoming. I've noticed that too. And like you're now you're an important part of the community, somebody who is thinking ahead of the curve on a lot of things. I reached out yesterday and said, "Hey, man, let's talk about restaurants and Bitcoin." And you're like, "Yeah, let's do it tomorrow morning." We love exploring these types of ideas, and I think that Bitcoiners are just a very curious bunch. And yeah, the resources that you just named off are fantastic. I think all of those are in audio books as well. Andreas Antonopoulos is The Internet of Money is the book that you recommended there. He's also been on Rogan's podcast a few times. So if anybody wanted to check that out, it's funny to listen to those. I recently went back and listened to him from, I think he did like 2014, 2016, 2017. So all the different points in time. And it's funny. If you go back to his first one, his message is identical to what it is today. Like, that's just a dude who gets it, who everyone else over a 7-year period caught up to him, and they're, thinking the same way.
Yeah, Andreas is an amazing part of the Bitcoin community because he does a really good job at explaining the technology, and I've binge watched a ton of his videos.
Yeah,
all of his books. The Internet of Money, by the way, is 3 parts. I've devoured them all in like 1 week, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, so he's really good.
And you mentioned there's a few people that you mentioned there that I want to emphasize too. Robert Breedlove has become one of my newer favorite authors. Yeah, the Bitcoin and the number zero was incredible. The what was it? The Masters of uh, yeah. That one was awesome. I referenced that in a past podcast episode that I did on shrinkflation and inflation, and he has this concept called the winemaker's dilemma, where how do you deal with inflation as a small business owner? And I highly encourage people to listen to that and to read Robert's stuff as well, because he goes deep. He gets really cosmic. And so the ideas in this space are so, they're just so, it seems kind of complicated and cosmic and out there, but it's all so basic. It all runs into, you know, this first principles, basic economics, supply and demand, the laws that make, you know, that turn productivity into a store of value, or you know, I mentioned recently that, you know, Bitcoin is catching electricity, lightning in a bottle, or electricity in a bottle. And like, that's such a, like, those types of concepts are so cool to trying to explore. And the people that we're listing off here are just phenomenal at distilling those types of concepts into these. Some of them are like 2 pages on Medium, just quick reads. Yeah.
And you know, David, I also want like to tell everybody out there that ever since we went on the Bitcoin standard, the worry and the fear of what could happen around us and might happen or whatever doesn't matter, right? It gave me this calm and this, it actually increased our motivation and our drive to do better in our business, because we know that the work that we're going to do today is going to store across time and space.
Yep.
Right? So it gave us this new found like energy that, you know, is definitely how people should live their lives, right? They should just focus on their family, their health, their careers, and that's what matters, right? I know tons of people around me that are doctors, dentists, lawyers, right? They shouldn't be spending their time trying to be like their own financial advisor or pick stocks or whatnot. Going on a Bitcoin standard can give you that. It definitely gave us that, and hopefully we can show more businesses around the world how it can positively affect your business. So we're doing our best.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's incredible. And I've noticed the same thing with myself. My habits have changed, you know, thinking more long term. And that's a concept of time preference, right? So you guys know that your productivity is going to be stored in a currency that cannot be devalued by an outside source. So you know you'll have that down the road. So you start to think, you know, with a lower time preference, or just a further out time horizon. And that changes me. I mean, me personally, I you know, you start thinking about your health a lot more, your future, you know, different vehicles of savings. Of course, I've gotten to that same conclusion. I think that Bitcoin is my favorite version of a store of value. But you start to think of these other things. You know, what can you do? Grind for 5 years on one project and build this thing out, build your franchisee program out. And that the profit that you will get, the return on investment for that is yours to keep forever, to pass on, if you store it properly. And it's phenomenal. It does all these things to your mindset about what you're working on. And yeah, so it's incredible, man. Not I've definitely noticed I've become, you know, what I think is a better version of me over the past few years, reading about these types of concepts and learning about Bitcoin specifically.
100%, David. 100. And also, just to add to that,
Yeah.
because to any business owner that's listening to us right now, when we say we went on a Bitcoin standard, it doesn't mean we only accept Bitcoin for payments or pay all of our expenses in Bitcoin. We actually do none of that, right? We operate 100% by the fiat system of wherever we are, whether in Canada or in the future, maybe in the US. We're going to operate in dollars, and we pay our expenses, our wages in dollars. Everything is done in dollars. And then how we do it is that we have a safe cushion of working capital that we're going to need for the next 6 months. And then everything on top of that is company reserves, is our treasury. And that's what we take and we convert it into Bitcoin. So
Awesome.
we actually don't take any Bitcoin payments or because it's not efficient, and we don't think it's a payments technology. There's tons of stuff out there that are way better at doing that.
Like dollars or Canadian dollars. That's their job, is to spend it quickly.
Yeah, right. So we're not going to even, like, unless maybe 50% of people want to eventually pay in Bitcoin in the future, maybe we'll look into that. But it doesn't have to mean that you should accept it in all of your businesses and stuff like that. So I just wanted to make that clear for business people that are listening. You don't have to do any of that. You just have to do it that way.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. That's important to note. Dollars are made to spend, Bitcoin's made to save. I would agree with that. Yeah. All right, man. Well, this has been incredible. I want to just wrap up with where can people find you? Like where can people learn more about Tahini's, about you, or for anyone looking to franchise? Where should they go?
100%. So you can follow us on Twitter. We're at The Real Tahini's, and we have also, like, we're on all the platforms: TikTok, Instagram, Facebook,
cool.
You name it. And if you want to reach out for us for a franchise opportunity, you can just DM us on Twitter, and we'll be able to communicate there, or through our website or wherever you can reach us. And we run a pretty profitable franchise, and we built a good business over the years. We've hammered out all the little details of it. And so if anybody's interested in opening a profitable business and serving people great food, just hit us up.
Awesome, man. And like I said, if you guys do make your way into the States, you and I will be talking, because I'll be your distributor, hands down. We're gonna work together. I've got to work on getting my company and leadership on the Bitcoin standard too.
Just send them this interview.
I will. Absolutely. I've been dropping little hints here and there and telling them about it, but it takes a while to come around. It's just it's a process. Yeah. But awesome, man. And I will certainly next time I'm out there on the East Coast of the US, now I have a reason to pop up to London, Ontario, and get some of that chicken shawarma. I saw a shawarma chicken poutine on your menu, which looked pretty fantastic. I think that's a great combination of the Mediterranean and the Canadian.
Yeah, that's what happens when when you have Egyptians immigrate to Canada. They built this hybrid cuisine that people can enjoy. So
that's awesome, man. I love it. All right, man. Well, thank you so much. This has been awesome. We'll stay in touch. I'd love to have you back on the show again when we start seeing this thing kick off, and if we're going into this, the next epoch of the life of Bitcoin. It'll be curious to see kind of how things have progressed down the road a little bit. So
amazing. I'd love to be on your show anytime. Just hit us up and let us know.
Awesome, man. All right. Thank you so much. We'll talk soon. Okay.
All right.